Hello everyone, my name is Girish, and in this video we will create an application where we will integrate Amazon Bedrock with a serverless service like Lambda. We will also build a front end for this Lambda backend, which we will build using Docker and Streamlit. We will be using Cohere model from Bedrock. So let's start. What will we build? We will actually build an AWS Lambda, which will act as our backend. In this video, I'm not going to create an API gateway, but rather we will use Lambda's function URL to invoke the Lambda. Our user will connect to our application, which will be deployed using Docker and Streamlit. And once user types some text that they want to summarize, we will actually make a post call to the Lambda. Lambda will actually invoke Cohere model, pass our text as a prompt, and get the response back. And that's what we will show to the user. So if you're ready, let's begin coding. First, we will code the backend, we'll test the function, and then we will delve into coding the front end. So if you're new to Bedrock, you will have to go to your AWS console, go to the Bedrock section, and somewhere over here you will have to request the access for the model. So as you can see in my account, I have requested the access. So if you don't have it, please request the access before trying it. I'm also assuming you have the AWS CLI setup, and the CLI is set up with a user that has access to the Bedrock. So as I said, the model that we will be using is Cohere. So let's just quickly find from the playground. Let's just find the Cohere model. Let's go to provider. And if you scroll down, or you can search, this is Titan, but let's just search for the Cohere real quick. Right here. So we will need this page, and since we use the Cohere command R model and Cohere command model, and that's why we need some of these request attributes. Okay, so let's start writing our Lambda, and then we will test the Lambda and write our front end. So let me open another tab here. And okay, so actually I don't need this right now because I'm writing a Lambda function first. So let's go back to my code, Lambda console. Okay, so, and we will be using Python in this. I can create Lambda using serverless framework, etc. But in this simple tutorial, I'll use just the console because we are trying to get the idea of like how Lambda interacts with Bedrock rather than creating, like showing how Lambda can be created with Terraform or serverless. So let's call it text, or let's say summarize text Lambda. We will use Python, and Python version, if you scroll down, you can see 10 and 11 both are available. We will use Python version 11. Rest of the settings I will leave as is. So let's create the function. While my function is getting created, if you're new to the channel and if you liked the videos so far, please like and subscribe to my channel. I will be posting more videos on generative AI, Kubernetes, DevOps, Terraform, etc. So it surely is going to help. So please like and subscribe. Okay, my Lambda function is ready. Why don't we just give it a quick test? And I'll just call it test1. Just save it, and I run the test. Okay, so it's printing hello from Lambda. So this Lambda function is working fine. Now we will be using a library called Boto3. So Boto3 is nothing but Python SDK version, Python SDK from Amazon. So we'll use Boto3. We will also use JSON as well because we will be parsing the request that is coming in. Going back here, I'll copy this real quick and keep it with me so I don't have to come again here. Okay, so let's define some variables. Let's call it model ID as we can just copy like this. Okay, so let's move on. We will initialize our Bedrock client. So let's call it Bedrock client is boto3.client, and we will initialize a client with the name Bedrock runtime. Okay. Now let's go to our Lambda function, and here we will implement the logic. So first thing first, we will be receiving our prompt or the text that we need to summarize in a post body. I'm keeping it as a post because there is limitation on how many characters can you send in the query string. And that makes it a little bit less practical. So we will actually use it as a post request. So let's get the body. Body comes from event body. And since we want as a JSON object, we can just say JSON.loads the body. And we will actually getting requests like something like this. We will be getting prompt or whatever we want to call it, but let's say some text. So this is what we will be getting. So this is our body. This is what our body will look like. So I will get the prompt from the body, and which will be body.get, for example, and I'll just say prompt. Now, as I mentioned that we have to send the details in this format, as well as if you see the body that we send to the actual LLM takes a few additional parameters other than the prompt. So let's just define another variable, which we'll call, let's say, body to LLM equals to, and it takes a bunch of parameters. I'm just going to write like this: prompt. Prompt is whatever the prompt we are receiving from the front end. And I'm going to copy some of these things from here. For example, max token, we will just say keep it to 200. I think Cohere model can take up to 4096. I'll just keep it default for right now. Temperature I would like to reduce. I don't want the model to hallucinate too much, so I'm going to just, let's say, keep it 0.5. P is 1 and K is 0. So let's just say I just keep P as whatever, sorry, I'll define P as, let's say, 0.9 and K as 0. So this is what our body to the LLM would look like, because we need it in this format. Okay, so this is just the body part. Now we actually have to build the actual payload. So I'm just going to call it a payload variable. Now payload is nothing but this whole thing. So our payload will look something like, let's say, model ID is our model ID that we defined earlier, and our content type is the content type, I think we defined it earlier, and accept is accept, and our body, I'm actually going to make these also string, doesn't really matter, but let's be consistent. And body is stringified JSON object of what we just created, body to LLM. So body will be json.dumps and body to LLM. So this is our payload. Calling the large language model is very simple with Boto3 client, and all we need to do is just get a response back. And the way to get it is using the Bedrock client, we'll say invoke model. Now this invoke model takes this payload as a key value parameter, not exactly as a JSON string, so we have to send every key value parameter that we have in there. So I'll just say payload. Okay, let's just print the response. But the response has something called response as a body, which is a streaming body. So we'll get some bytes. So let's say response bytes are actually response is body, and we have to read on it. What we'll do is we'll actually create a response string from we'll create a JSON object from this. So let's say response JSON is JSON.loads from the response bytes, and the text from Cohere model is in a particular element called generations. So what we'll do is from the response JSON, what we'll do, we'll get the generations and the very first element, and that elements will just say text, and this will be our response text. So we are making a call to the LLM, is printing the response. LLM's body is read into byte stream, and then from that we'll create a JSON object, and from the JSON object we'll actually, I'm just going to print this so that we can see how JSON object look like. But all this is available in the documentation as well. So if you take a look at documentation, it's very clear on what attributes and what kind of payload comes back when we get the response. And here we don't want to say hello from Lambda, we will want to return whatever comes back in the response text. So what we'll say is json.dump response text. Okay, so I think our Lambda is good. What I'm going to do is going to deploy this. Now we go to configuration, and generating this response may take longer than 3 seconds. So I'm going to change the timeout on the Lambda. Let's make it 29 seconds, because in case if you want to integrate it with the API gateway's timeout limit is 29 seconds. In this tutorial, we will be using Lambda Function URLs, but just in case if you want to try it with the API gateway. Another thing we have to do is come down here, and in the function URL section, I'm just going to zoom a little bit. If you see the function URL section on the left hand side, you have to create the function URL. And for this particular exercise, we will choose the auth type as none, because we want this URL to be publicly available so we can invoke it from outside. Okay, so the function URL is available right here. Let's give it a test and see how it looks like. So I'm going to go to my Postman and copy this URL right here. And as you know that we are sending the body in the prompt. So the prompt has some text that we want to summarize and see what the results are. So I'm going to ask a very simple question: who is the President of the United States? And then see what response that we get. Or if we get any error, then we will fix the error. So we got internal server error. Most likely it is the IAM permission, because right now our Lambda has a default permission, so it cannot invoke the Bedrock. So let's check the error. Go to the monitor, go to the CloudWatch, and if you scroll down, you can see the stream, and this is where it says, let's see. Okay, so this is the error on the variable name because I have typo payload. So let's try this and see. it again. So prompt payload. Okay, right there. Let's redeploy this Lambda. Lambda is deployed. Let's try it again. We got another error. So let's go back to our log group, scroll down and refresh and see this error. So now it says access denied exception. As I mentioned, our Lambda has basic permission, so we have to give it a permission that allows it to invoke models in Bedrock. So what we'll do is go back to Lambda. If you go to configuration, on the left hand side you will see permissions, and you see that by default when we create a Lambda, basic role is created. So I'm going to go to this role, summarize text role, and this is where you attach any permission. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and attach a policy. If I search for, let's say, Bedrock, I see Amazon Bedrock full access. I think if we are in a production setup, we can give very fine-tuned permissions of whether it's invoke model, etc. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to give Bedrock full access, and we'll try to invoke again. So the permission is set up correctly now. Let's try to invoke this Lambda function URL again with our prompt and see what happens. Alright, so it got me some response. It took 9.46 seconds. As I said, the default Lambda timeout 3 seconds would not be enough for interacting with the large language models. So it gives me some text, and Joe Biden is the 46th incoming president of the United States, etc., etc. So our Lambda function URL is working. Now we are off to creating our front end, and I'll be using Docker and Streamlit to create the front end. Let's do it. So let's create the front end. Here I am in my Visual Studio Code. I am in a new folder called Bedrock with Serverless Text Summarization folder. I have nothing created so far, so this is where we'll create our front end code. So first thing first, let's create Docker file, and let's create another file called requirements. Let's start with these, and then we need in the requirements.txt we need let's see here. Okay, so in the requirements.txt we need Streamlit, and let me just zoom in a little bit. All right, so we need a Streamlit, and we also need request module from Python, because we will be making API calls to our Lambda function URL. While here, I'll also create our app.py file, so that this is where we write our program to make the interaction. So requirements is good. In the Docker file, we'll actually create, we'll start with our base image, which is Python 11. On Python 11, and we will expose this application on port 8082. Let's create a directory. Now we'll copy the requirements. Once we copy the requirement, we'll run the pip install to install all the dependent modules for our application. Okay. Once you have this, we can copy rest of the files. I do this step so that our dependencies are cached and I don't have to do the pip install again and again, because from here onwards, after we build the image first time, I only want to build the image with whatever my application changes are, unless they change the requirements.txt also. So that's why I do this step here and then copy the rest of the files. Here we will define an entry point. An entry point is nothing but Streamlit. And what commands do we run? We do run, we do app.py, Another thing is, since we are running it on 8082, we can just say server.port, and well, we'll also do server.address 0.0.0.0. Okay, so our Docker file is ready. Let's go to app.py and start writing our front-end code. So first thing first, we will import some dependent libraries, import some modules. Streamlit as st. We will need JSON. We'll also need time, because I want to make it look like the model is sending the response in a streamed way rather than all the text at once. Now so I think that's enough. That's all we need. We need request also, right? So we need requests. Okay, so let's see if we need something else, then we will get some more stuff. But let's start writing the code. Here I'm going to minimize this bottom part, and then we'll say if name equals to main. Then what do? We'll run the main function. Now we don't have main function defined yet, so let's define the main function. And this is where our program logic goes. So let's set up some st.set page config. Let's call it text summarization demo, and st.header, you can just say something nice as AWS Bedrock integration with Serverless Lambda. It could be anything, but this opens up many aspects or avenues for you guys to try, where you can create your serverless application, whether it's API Gateway Lambda, whether it's GraphQL and Lambda, and then using those you can invoke it Bedrock, or you can integrate with Bedrock, invoke different large language models, and depends on your application that you're trying to build. You might want to choose Cohere, you might want to choose Anthropic models, etc. But this particular tutorial can actually be extended, because the knowledge that will be gained here is actually integrating Lambda with your Bedrock. So AWS Bedrock integration with Serverless Lambda. That's fine. Or we can just put Cohere model also. Okay, so this is we have created page config, we created a header. Now what we do, we actually want to display a text area from where we'll get the text. So text is st.text area. We want to show text area where user can actually put some text that you want to summarize. Write text to summarize, for example. We'll also give them a button. Let's say if st.button, and we call the button summarize it or something, summarize it. If user presses the button, then what do? We actually want to post this particular text that they write to our Lambda function. Lambda function will actually post it to the large language model, and we get the summarized text or some text back from the LLM. So let's just, since it takes time, let's just put a spinner on, and we just say with st.spinner, let's say processing. And what do while this is processing? We actually call the LLM. Call actually Lambda function URL. Actually, I just want to create another method so that it's easier. We'll just do st.write, and let's call our method get response. And what do we getting response from? We're getting response from the text message or that the user has typed in. Okay, now I'll go back to my Postman and get this URL because we will be needing this URL to post our request to. So I'm going to create this method called define get response, and here I can just call it, let's say API endpoint. Okay, so the get response, we have to create a payload, and the payload is nothing but prompt. And what do you want the prompt to look like? We can actually do this, the first part of it, in the Lambda function or here. I'll just do it from here since we did not do it in Lambda function. So I'll just say, please summarize, okay, summarize the following text. Now what text? Let's just put a new line character, and then we'll say this is the text that we want to summarize, and this text actually comes as a parameter in this method. Okay, so this is our payload. Now we will have to make a API call. So how do we do that? We just do response as, we'll use the Python's request module, requests dot post. Now where are we posting? We're posting to the API endpoint that we have, and we post as a JSON payload. JSON is payload. Okay, let's just print the status. Print response dot, I think it's status code. Okay, we will do that. So just in case there are any error, we will be able to see what error are coming back. And then we'll just say, we just need, or we are just interested in response text. So response text will actually be response.text, and that should be it. Then, as I said, we want text to not appear all at once. I want it to give it a feeling like the LLM is responding and we are displaying it in, in a streaming way. So this is a little trick that we can do. What we can do is, we can split our response text. For every word in response text, what do we do? Response text dot split. We will actually send whatever we got so far. So yield the word and give it a little empty space after that, and then we'll say time dot sleep for, let's say, 0.1 seconds. So whatever we have in the response text, it will be sent back and displayed to the user with 0.1 seconds sleep in between. So we will see it in action. So I think that's all for this front-end code. We got the API endpoint, and this API endpoint can actually be passed as an environment variable to the Docker image as well. But for the simplicity of this demo, we'll keep it here. Here I'm creating a payload, giving the instruction to the LLM, and sending whatever the user has sent for text summarization, making a post call, getting the response back, and displaying the response in a streaming fashion right here. So let's build this Docker image and run it. Let me just save it. So I'm just going to build this Docker image, something like this. Let's call this Docker build -t serverless text summarization front end. Now I have already downloaded all the dependencies. Mine could be a little faster, but yours may take some time as it's downloading and installing the dependencies. So my Docker image is built. Let's just run it. Okay, so it's running and it's available at 8082. So let's head over to our browser and try to run this application. Okay, so it says AWS Bedrock integration serverless Lambda, Cohere model, which is great, and we don't have any text, so let's write some text to summarize it. Obviously, you can build some validations, etc. If there's no text, then don't enable the button and those kind of things. But let's go to CNN, any article, and then let's see if we can summarize some some of it. So let's go here and see. So let's go to WNBA player, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to summarize this. As you can see, it's processing, and now we are getting the text back, response back, and we're displaying it in the streaming fashion. The text is about an WNBA player signing a contract with Wilson, etc., etc. So okay, great. Let's try to get another article from CNN. It could be anything. It could be a medical journal. It could be any other place. But I just want to show some real article that we can summarize. Let's see. Oh my goodness, so dead monkeys are dropping. So let's see, I'm going to send these 2 paragraphs of text and see what it says. So okay, let's try it again. As you can see, our model has summarized the text very well. So that's it for this demo. So in a nutshell, this is what we did. And this code will be available in my GitHub repo, and I will be providing a link in the description. So we built a backend with the Lambda function in Python. That Lambda function actually integrated with our Bedrock Cohere model, and we tested the function. On the front end side, we have a Docker file that we created, and we, from the application loaded in the browser, once the user puts some text, we actually post it to the Lambda Function URL, and then the Lambda function extracts the post's content and invoke the model. Model's response is displayed back to the user in streaming fashion. Again, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. I'll be posting a lot more videos on generative AI applications with Bedrock, with Vertex AI, etc. I'll also be posting some more tutorials on Terraform, Kubernetes, etc. So if you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing and share this video with your friends and everyone else. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye now.